No. It's just the batting order. There's nothing else. Okay, yeah.
Okay.
Diana 3. Yeah, Keith 4.
Yep.
Yeah, and I'll take it from there. Valentina 5. Phil, are you doing one tonight? Yeah, so we'll do Phil. 5, Valentina.
5, Valentina.
Right. Oh, there's John. John's just turned. Okay.
Can you hear me?
I can. We were just getting started without you. So.
Well, yeah, my computer was being dodgy.
We missed you Friday.
Yeah, I had no connection. I was sitting in the field with no connection.
Somehow we managed to trudge through it. We got through it.
Shut up. Good morning. Well, have we started, or
I just got the batting order again. I was just about to kick off with my own story. So if you want to announce it, are you staying on, or are you having to slip off again?
No, I'm actually back at the flat, just. But I'm off the road. I was at Croppedy, and that finishes on Saturday night. Right. So, ladies and gentlemen, girls and boys in assembled company, welcome to the World Storytelling Cafe. And tonight is, or today, depending on where you are in this big wide world, is Worldwide Story Round, hosted by none other than the amazing Mike Rust from Get a Word In Edgeways. But you know that because he's been talking to you already. So, Mike, over to you.
Right, thank you very much, John. And as I said, we've got a batting order sorted out. So we're going Baba, Diana, Keith, Phil, Valentina, John, if you want to do some at the end, and we'll take it from there. I'll sit here until everybody's done at least one story, and maybe if you want to do 2. I've got Waleed, is it? I've never met you before, my friend, but you're very welcome to come. If you want to tell a story, you can.
Waleed, if I can cut it, Waleed is our new person we've been here a few weeks at the cafe, but he is a computer genius, I'm told. So he's good on the wires.
Well, Waleed, you're gonna have your work cut out keeping John Moe in order, I tell you, mate. So I hope your qualifications are top dollar, because you've got to keep him in order. And around Christmas, he turns into Father Christmas, and you're gonna have some real work to do. You are. Okay. Right, so we need to mute yourself, and the person who's not muted are John and Baba. You're neither muted, and I'm going to start off with this little tale, and then I'm going to go to Baba. Because once on the other side of the country from where I live, there's a place called East Anglia. And East Anglia, I don't really know much about it. I haven't been there very much myself, but it's a region like Ulster in Ireland and the Welsh Marsh and things like that. And it's sort of Suffolk and Norfolk and Cambridgeshire and Lincolnshire and Essex, I think. Keith will correct me if I'm wrong about Essex, but it's that side of the world. But it's north of the Thames, not south of the Thames. And a few years ago, a little baby was born there, and he was born with a crook arm. And his one leg was a bit longer than the other, and he had a little hunchback on his back. But he was born to a widow. For the year was just after 1918, so it's the beginning of 1919. And he was born, and he lived in a little house in the Fens, miles away from him. But he had a really loving mother, and she did the best for him, and she did a few bits and pieces, had a little bit of ground there, and she seemed to keep it all together one way or another. And the little fella grew up. But like I said, he was a bit crook, and she was a widow, so she didn't have any younger brothers and sisters. But the one thing he could do, almost before he could walk, and he never walked very well, was to sit in a little boat. And he had a little sailing boat. And he had a little sail at the front and a bigger sail at the back. And it was only about 12, 14 foot long. It wasn't very big. But when he sat in that is when he could fly. Now, he used to sail it with his one hand holding there. And he used to do the others with his little crook arm, but he used to have to hold them open his teeth sometimes. And he could do that while he was changing direction in the wind and stuff like that. And he'd sit, and he had this bench made especially for him, so he could sit straight, even though his feet and his body were a bit crooked. And that's how he did it. He went to school like that. That was his way. But every morning as the sun came up, this is the time that he went out. And it wasn't long before he knew every bird that flew over the seas and in the estuaries. He knew how the tides worked and everything else. And they say nowadays that the dolphins and the porpoises used to come and greet him. And certainly the things that lived in the sea were his friends. And that's where he was the most confident. And that's where he lived his life. But when he was 14 or 15, he'd spent all his time out there. And he came back one day and he did the same that he used to do in his little boat in front of an easel with some canvas on it. He'd packed in school and school packed in with him. But he started painting what he could see. And of course, he had a very good eye. He'd been there all his life. He got the colours right and he knew the names of all the birds and everything else. And his mother looked at it, and she wasn't very old herself. She was only sort of 38, 40, something like this. And she looked at these pictures one day and she went into the little town and she went and found an art dealer. And the art dealer looked at them and he nodded and he said, there's stuff here. So why don't we come to an arrangement where I'll give you a little bit of money, but I'll give you the canvases and the paint. And let him fly. Let him fly on canvas like he flies in his little boat. And that's what they did. And every month she'd take the paintings into the art dealer. He didn't want to go so. They got the money, and that way their life sort of evolved around and everything else. And one day she went in, but everything was quiet, everything was different. And she went into the shop and went, what's happened now? And he said, well, we thought we were going to have a war last year, but we're having another one this year. The Germans have started a war again. We're at war. For it was September 1939. And she went out and she told him, and she went over, and on the mantelpiece, there was a picture of a soldier. And he was a young man. He had a great big broad chin, and he had a great big, and he had stripes on his arms. And she picked up a tip and she put her fingers onto the photo. She said, that's where your dad went. He went off to war when he was 18 and he never came back. And that's what's going to happen over here. Lots of men are going to go over and they're never going to come back. But the one thing is certain is they won't have you. You'll be able to stay here with me. And he said, well, I could do my bit. I can help. Yeah, I know you can. But look at you. For once, we've often wondered why you look like you do. For this time, it means you can stay here with me and you can be safe. And he didn't think much of that, but he looked round and he worked out the dates and he says, does that mean I'm 21? And she said, yeah, you'll be 21 about that. She did. And that's all she said. And she went and sat outside with him. Well, that winter went through, but she was ill in the spring. And in the spring, he had to go himself. He didn't like to do it, but he took his own photos in there, the pictures that he'd taken and the paintings that he'd made. And he went in to see the artist. But everybody was looking worried and everybody shared the newspapers. And he goes, what's going on? He said, the army is in trouble. Over in France, things have gone really badly. It's had to retreat. It's had to go to a place called Dunkirk. And they've asked for all the little boats to go over and help them save them. And he looked at his little boat. He went, I'll go. And the artist dealer, he said, you have to go down to the docks and see the Navy. It's the Navy's in charge. So he went down there, hobbled away. And he said, you need boats. And they said, we do. But I'm afraid you can't come. Look at you. Why don't you stay here? There's always a role for everyone. Help the women make the cakes and the sandwiches. Work in the hospitals. We're going to need lots of people working in hospitals. And we're going to need lots of people in the cemeteries. There's work for you. But I'm afraid you can't come with us because all the little boats were being lined up to travel across to Dunkirk. But he went back that day and he sat down and he looked at the picture of his dad. And he looked at his mother and he put some sandwiches together and he put a flask of tea together. And without saying anything, as the sun came up that morning, he took his little boat and he sailed across the English Channel. That's why they don't call it the French one, because it's an English one. He knew where to go because there was steam and there was smoke and there were fires and there was airplanes and there was noise and there was everything else. And he was following all the other little boats And everybody looked at this little fella with the rope in his mouth on the tiller, looking more determined than anybody else. When he got there, you know the story as well as I am, the army's trapped. The little boats were called to go into the shallows so they could pick them up to take them to the bigger boats. The mold was working and all the Navy was doing its best. But he looked round. And in the shallowest bit of the shallowest shoals, there was nobody there, but there were soldiers. And he took his little boat in there. And he said to the first one, I can only take 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, one out the boat, the front, with his legs hanging down. I can take 5. That's all I can do. And a Scots voice, a voice with the accent of the Highlands, said, "Yee, gosh, 5's better than none. I'll be first." And a kilt wrapped round a soldier got into the boat with 4 of his mates. And he turned it round and they all looked at him and they all ducked. But he knew what he was doing. It was slow in the water. But he got to the bigger boats and there was a net there. And the Navy and everybody else looked at this little lad, his little boat, and 5 Scotties got out and they climbed up onto the boat and he went back for 5 more. They say that first day, he took 100 out, 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30, 35, 40, and so on. And in the end, the Navy said, we're taking our boat back. What are you going to do now? He said, I need to rest. It's been a long time, but I'll rest and I'll stay for a bit longer. They said, how are you going to rest? He said, oh, I learned that a long time ago. Round the wash. You put a sea anchor out, both ends, and the water just holds the boat there. And I can sleep in the bottom and I can go back. You just need a safe bit of water. And he went out into this channel. He found his safe bit of water in a cove he'd never seen before. And he went to sleep. And as the sun came up that next day, he came back in again. And there were different sailors there with different ships. But he went into the shallowest of all the shallowest water and he found more soldiers. And he brought them back again. 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30, 35, 40. And he brought them out. And he did it 3 times. The story goes he brought about 300 out. But then he was so tired he couldn't do anything. And he said to the Navy, I've done as much as I can. I'll have to go and rest. I'll come back next week. And the Navy said, we should be done next week. Listen to the radios. But you've been brilliant. Thank you very much. You've been great. And off he went. And he sailed across the English Channel, because they call it the English Channel, not French one. And he went round and he went back into the Wash, into East Anglia, into the Fenlands. He went back to his home. And that was the story I heard of the crooked little man and his crooked little boat that came from the Fenlands in East Anglia. But they say, as the stories go, that some of the soldiers, they were sat in the desert in Africa. And when they talked about Dunkirk, they'd talk about a little cookie man, a little cookie boat, and everybody would smile. Say, yeah, these legends happen, don't they? Then there were the D-Day landings and Italy and all those. We all know the story of the Second World War. We all know what happened in Russia as well, at Stalingrad. But in the end, the war was over. And we went to the Pacific and the scientists had worked out and there was a great big bomb. And that was the end of the war completely. But lots had happened since then. Dunkirk was 5 or 6 years ago. But nothing much was said. But the soldiers knew. 300 of them, roughly. Anyway, years later, there was a Scotsman, and he happened to be on holiday, apparently, down somewhere near Lowestoft, or somewhere I've never been to. But he was on the side of the Fenlands. And this little lad, his mother had died. And he was in the 50s. And they started talking about Dunkirk, and they started thinking, why don't we get all the boats together? In 1960s, 20 years after. All the little boats, they're still here, and we could have a bit of a celebration. We could go over to Dunkirk, we could gather them. And the soldiers thought this was a good idea. And he got to here, he wasn't interested in it. And he kept on, he went out, and he did his paintings, and he did his photographs, and he wrote a book. But that day the Scotsman was on holiday, he saw him come in. And he looked at the boat, and he looked at the older version of the young lad. And went, here, he said, were you at Dunkirk? Did you take your boat to Dunkirk and rescue soldiers? from the Highlands? He said, oh, I don't recall that, he said. I don't recall anything like that, really. And I went, are you sure? And he went, yeah. But that soldier, he went back to the Highlands and he talked to some of his friends. And they could remember. And they wrote it all down. But nothing much was said. And we don't know, really, if they went back and found him or not. Well, I don't know. Maybe they know. Anyway, back in the 80s and the 90s, one of these old soldiers, he'd had his time. And as Baba once said to me a few months ago, he passed from here to be an ancestor. And in his documents, his children found a story about a crooked little man on a crooked little boat that saved some Highland soldiers back in 1940 in Dunkirk. And nothing much has been said about it. You know, whether it's true or whether it's a fable or whether it's a legend. But the person told me, said it was his uncle. And there's a regiment up in Scotland somewhere. Diana, you'll have to forgive me my ignorance of the military history and everything. I think it's called the Black Watch. I think it's it's a battle group now. And maybe I'm wrong. Maybe it wasn't them, but it was someone in a kilt who died and told his niece to look into the papers. And she was sat telling stories around the fire one night. And Duncan Williamson got to hear of it. And he told me. So I thought I'd be telling that up in Whitby today. So next week. So anyway, it's the first time I've told it. I told it in public. It's been a story that's been knocking around for me. And I think I'm going to tell it sometime to get it out. But I hope it's true. And Keith, you're the one from that part of the world. So
it rung true. You said all the right places.
Well, you're from East Anglia, of course, John.
Lowestoft's on the edge of the Broads rather than the Fens, but Wash is on the edge of the Fens, so it's all there, and there's little boats everywhere.
Right. Okay. Right, there you go. Like I said, it's the first time for everything, and I encourage people to come here and tell stories for the first time. So I thought I'd do a new one. So it's been a while since I've done a new one. So here we go. Right. So thank you for listening. As we say, right, we're going to Baba. Baba, where are you, my friend? There you go.
I'm still here.
Yeah, still here. Yes.
Mike, your story is marvelous. You're always engaging, and I appreciate your style and the way you tell your stories. So I want you to know that. Okay. My story is going to change the atmosphere a bit. Your story is very serious, and that's great. My story is hopefully going to be a bit lighter. I understand some of you are dog lovers, and Diana, I think you had, yes, Mike, and Diana, I think you had a bit of a run-in because of your dog. And I know that John has a dog or two or three or four or five. I'm not sure about but anyhow, if you have dogs, did you know at one time that dogs and cats were the best of friends? Oh yeah. And this is the story about why the dog and the cat are no longer friends. Now, in the story, I'm going to mention something called polk salad, P-O-L-K. It has a couple of dialectic different names, but polk salad is an interesting salad. They tell me it tastes like spinach, and you fry it or you boil it. The peculiar thing about polk salad is that the polk plant, if eaten raw, is very poisonous. So you have to cook it. And what some people do is they cook it, and then they boil it, and then they boil it again. Now, when prepared nicely, or when prepared correctly, it's a very delicious salad, and they usually will fry it and add some onions and maybe a bit of garlic to it. So I just want you to know, because polk salad may be referenced in this story. That means if I remember. You see, brace yourselves. But let me put the original sound on. Time ago, is when this story took place. You see, a long time ago, the dog and the cat were the bestest of friends. Today they be called BFFs, best friends forever. Oh, they did everything together. They went to the movies together, which was rather peculiar because when this story was first told, there were no movies. There were no moving pictures. Oh, but they had a great time together. They did everything together. They took turns sleeping at each other's place. They were wonderful. Now the dog was very industrious, but the cat was rather laid back and, well, to be truthful, he was lazy. Now, they loved to eat meals together, but their favorite food in the whole wide world was ham. Oh, they loved themselves some ham. Oh man, just the thought of it made the dog holler. Arr! Strange dog. Oh, they love it, but you see, they weren't rich folk. They often didn't have a dime between them. But the dog, one day, the dog was talking to the cat. He said, you know what I'm in the mood for today? I'm in the mood for some ham. Yeah, some ham. And the cat said, what? But a dog. I ain't got no money for no ham. You got some money? No, but you know what? I'm gonna get some money. I'm gonna get some money, and you get some money, and we put our money together, and we can get ourselves a whole ham. Well, but a dog. That sounds like a good idea. But dog, I'll see you later. But a dog. Well, Roberta Dog went out and he just started doing every old odd job he could find. He dug ditches, he planted flowers, he helped harvest things. Oh, he worked hard and hard. And soon he had himself some coins. And he saw his friend Brother Cat walking down the road. He said, Brother Cat, you got some money? Brother Cat said, do I have some money? Brother Dog, do you have any money? Well, yeah. That's why I'm catching up with you. Well, if you got some money, Brother Dog, I got some money. Well, good, because we can put our money together and we can buy ourselves a whole ham. Okay, Brother Dog, let's go do this, Brother Dog. And Brother Dog, I tell you what, after we get this ham, I'm going to fix some pork salad. I'm going to fix some potato salad. I'm going to fix some yams with the butter running down the middle. And Brother Dog, I'm going to fix some cornbread. Yeah. My dog said, oh, yeah. That sounds good. Come on. We're going to go to town and we're going to get ourselves a whole ham. And so they went off to town. Brother Dog singing, we gonna buy us a ham. We gonna buy us a ham. We gonna buy us a ham. And Brother Cat, meow. And when they got to town, they went to Sister Chicken's store. Because Sister Chicken, if you wanted something, you went to Sister Chicken's store. And Brother Dog said, he said, hello, Sister Chicken. How are you today? And she said, I'm fine. How are you today, Brother Dog, with your fine-looking self? He said, well, I'm doing all right. I'm here with my bestest friend in the whole wide world. And we wants to buy the biggest, largest ham you got. Well, Brother Dog, hold on. I'm going to get some of my chicks to bring out a ham. And so the chicks brought out a ham. And Brother Cat said, is that the biggest ham you got? Meow. Can't you do better? Meow. We're going to spend our money on a ham. Well, Brother Cat, let me see what I can do. Let me see. And so the chicks took that ham back and they brought out another ham. Brother Dog said, oh, yeah, that's good. That's it. Brother Cat said, oh, come on, Sis Chick, you wasting our time. Is that the biggest ham you got? Well, I do have a bigger ham. Hold on now, but it may be too large for you guys to carry. The chicks took the ham back and they brought out this great big ham. That's the sound it made when it fell on the counter. And Brother Dog said, oh, yeah. That's a big old ham. Oh, yeah. Brother Cat said, well, I guess If that's the biggest one you got, meow, it'll do. Meow. Come on, bro, dog. Let's take this cat. Let's take Harm back to my house. I'm gonna fix some pork salad, and I'm gonna fix some potato salad, and I'm gonna fix some yams. And bro, dog, I'm gonna fix some cornbread with the butter running down the middle. Okay. So, bro, cat, you pick up part of the ham, and I'll pick up the other part. Bro, dog. That ham too big for me to be picking up. I tell you what, bro, dog. Why don't you pick up that ham? Oh, bro, cat, we done both paid for the ham, so we gotta both take turns carrying the ham. But bro, dog, why don't you carry the first half? Okay, I'll carry the first half, but then you gotta carry the second half, bro, cat. You gotta carry the second half. Oh, bro, dog, just put the ham on your back, and we'll be fine. So they put the big ham on top of bro, dog's back. Oh, this thing heavy. It's heavy. Oh, come on, bro, dog, you can do it. And bro, dog started to walk. And brother dog started chanting, "We gonna cook us all ham. We 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 gonna cook us all ham." And so they left the village. They went up the hill. They went down the hill. They went up the hill. They went down the hill. We gonna cook us all ham. We gonna cook us all ham. We gonna cook us all ham. Oh, I'm tired, bro, cat. It's your turn to carry the ham. Oh, bro, dog. Come on, all we gotta do is go through the stream and up that hill and down the next ridge, and we'll be almost at my house. No, bro, cat. We agreed. I would carry it half the way, and you would carry it the other half the way, and I done carried it most of the way. Come on, it's your turn to carry this ham. Bro, dog, look at me, bro, dog. I can't carry that big old ham, bro, dog. Bro, dog, come on. No, bro, cat. It's our ham. Come on, bro, cat. Your turn. Okay, bro, dog. Put the ham on my back. And bro, dog put the ham on bro, cat's back. Bam! Oh, that cat went straight to the ground. He kept trying to get up. So finally he got up and he started singing, "I'm gonna cook my ham. I'm gonna cook my ham." Whoa. What you singing there, bro, cat? That's not your ham. That's not my ham. That's our ham. And you should be singing, "You gonna cook our ham." Bro, dog, did I bother you and tell you what to sing when you carried this big old ham? Well, no, but no, but I'm gonna sing what I'm gonna sing while I'm carrying this ham. I'm gonna cook our ham, and I'm gonna fix pork salad, potato salad, some yams, and a cornbread with the butter running down the middle. Yeah. So I'm gonna cook my ham. I'm gonna cook my ham. I'm gonna cook my ham. And then Brother Cat did something rather peculiar. Brother Cat knocked the ham off him back, grabbed the ham with one claw and started running. Full tilt. I'm gonna cook my ham. 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 Hey, bro, cat, come back here. That's not your ham. That's not my ham. That's our ham. And bro dog started running. And brother cat leaped up a tree and started climbing up the tree with the ham in his hand, climbed up the tree and got a great big fat branch. I'm gonna cook my ham. I'm gonna cook my ham. Bro cat, come down there. Don't make me come up there. Now, bro cat knew the dog couldn't climb a tree. I'm gonna cook my ham. I'm gonna cook my ham. Brother dog started climbing the tree. Oof. But most dogs can't climb trees, and brother dog couldn't climb. He fell. Because brother dog done fall on him back. Brother dog, is you okay? No. Brother dog, can you move? No. Are you sure you can't move? Oh, hit my back. okay, brother dog. And brother cat came down from the tree, looked at brother dog, and then shot off in the other direction and went home. Brother dog was laying on the ground in pain, and he could smell the poke salad being boiled and then fried. He smelled the onions and the garlic in the poke salad, and he smelled the potato salad being made fresh, and he could smell the yams. But most of all, he could smell that hot cornbread with the butter running down the middle, and he smelled the hum. And brother dog began to crawl. He crawled through the stream. He crawled up the ridge. He crawled down the next ridge. He crawled and he crawled and he crawled until he just got outside of Brother Cat's house. And he could smell all that delicious food. And he said, Brother Cat, open the door. Open the door. Who that? Who knocking at my door? It's me, Brother Dog. Brother Dog who? You know Brother Dog who. Open that door. That's our harm. You're supposed to share it. And Brother Cat had one of them, what they call it, Dutch windows, Dutch door. And he opened the door and he looked at Brother Dog on the ground in pain, and he ate some poke salad. And then he had some potato salad. And then he had the yams. And then he took a big old slab of ham and put it between two big old slabs of cornbread with the butter running down the middle. Brother Dog said, that's not your ham. You better share that ham with me. You better share that ham with me. No, that's not fair. And Brother Cat said, you still want some ham, Brother Dog? You still want some ham? Yes. Well, here, you can have this. And Brother Cat threw the bone to Brother Dog. Brother Dog caught it and chomped down on it looking for some meat, but there was no meat. Oh, brother Cat, that wasn't your ham. That was our ham. We both paid for it. You're supposed to share. You're supposed to share, Brother Cat. Well, you know what, Brother Dog? You can eat that bone, because I done ate the rest. And he shut the window. Yeah, well, when you come out that house, you better be looking over your back, because I'm going to get you, dog. I'm going to get you, cat. I'm going to get you. I'm going to get you. I'm going to get you. And Brother Dog, he very slowly made his way back to his home. But he took that bone with him. You could say that was a bone of contention, but he took that bone with him and he crawled all the way back to his house. And to this day, that dog remembers what Brother Cat did. And to this day, when a dog sees a cat, he tells him, you ate our ham, now I'm gonna get you, cat. And that's why the cat and the dog are no longer best friends. And I hope that was delicious. That was a story for your stomach as well as for your soul. Asante.
Asante. Yeah, thank you, Baba. That's brilliant. Thank you very much. It's a top dollar story again, as always. Right. So
thank you. That's one of my favorite stories.
Yeah, they're going to Keith from Lincolnshire. Can I see Lincolnshire behind you? Or is that part of Middle Earth?
Diana was going next, but I can go if you want.
No, I've got, well, oh, I beg your pardon. You're right. I'm wrong.
Okay. Okay.
Sorry. Yeah, but Diana, I did say to you next. Sorry, I beg your pardon. I'm misreading it. So Diana, Keith, Phil. Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Keith. Diana, nice to see you again from the Highlands.
Before I forget, Keith, yeah, I was totally admiring your backdrop. It's fantastic. So thank you.
Yeah, it is. It's lovely, isn't it?
It's lovely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So how's your leg? How's your leg?
It's getting there. I'm very good at moaning, so if it's not going well, I just moan to my husband. But it's getting better. So we'll slowly get back to normal.
Brilliant.
Anyway, not so long ago, I heard Baba telling a story about a young boy called Mackenzie, who was also called Purple Boy. Yeah. And I thought to myself, Mackenzie, that's an unusual name. And then I remembered that I knew a story about a young lad, and he was called Mackenzie. And he came from the Highlands in Scotland. Right, Mackenzie, well, he was a ferryman. He was about 17, 18 years old, and he'd learned the trade from his father and his grandfather. In fact, it went way back beyond that. So it wasn't much surprise when Mackenzie announced that he was going to take over as being the ferryman for that particular area. And he used to have a run that ran from the Great Glen up to Inverness. And he loved the scenery. It was so beautiful. What he did in his spare time was a lot of painting. And he would draw landscapes. He would take note of what the sky was like at different times and the water. Sometimes it would be grey, sometimes it would be blue, sometimes it would be green, and it would all merge together. And he would just love painting that and realizing, well, what lies beneath the sea. But not in this case, it was beneath the loch, because it was all around about Loch Ness, which we all know is so deep it could swallow up loads of other lochs, because the water is just really, really deep. And maybe there are things that stay there that we don't know about. But anyway, that was the way that he did his run from the Great Glen to Inverness. And he would take produce, he would take barrels and crates, and he would also take livestock, and he would take people. And if he took people, he was a very chatty young lad, and they liked going on the ferry. So that was how he made his living. Now, it was quite a hard time. A lot of crops had failed. Well, there wasn't as much fish in the sea. It was a really hard time for everyone, and people were very grateful for any food that they could have. But he went on with his job and did it the best he could. Well, this particular day, he was out in his boat admiring the scenery, and he thought he saw something up ahead, something stirring in the water. Now, as well as the landscape, he loved to see any wildlife, otters, seals. On the land, he might see some deers and foxes. So he was a bit curious, and he slowed the boat right down, and he crept alongside. And when he got alongside, all he could see was the swirling grey, blue, green. And then it seemed like there was more grey than there was of the blue and the green. And well, surprise, there were those two eyes from hooded eyelids popping out at him. And he wondered what kind of creature this was. It was too big for an otter. Would it have been a large seal? He just wasn't sure. But then, well, the thing was, as I say, the times were hard. And for his lunch that particular day, all Mackenzie had were 2 fish and some oatmeal. But there was something about this creature that he'd never seen before. And he decided on an impulse to throw the fish in the air. And the strangest thing happened after that. Out popped a neck, a head, and it was green and it was grey and it was blue. He'd never seen anything like it. And it snapped the fish. And well, Mackenzie just stood there, totally amazed. But then the creature just went back into the water and off. Well, you know what it's like when something amazing, something fascinating, something that never normally happens to you. You're dying to tell someone. You're just about exploding. But then who will you tell? Because you don't want anybody to laugh at you. And people round about knew that this Mackenzie had quite an imagination, and they would be sure to make a lot of fun of him. So he didn't really want to go down that route and tell any of his mates. And the only person he could think of that wouldn't breach the confidence was his granny. And she stayed not far from him. And so he went to see her. And he was used to going to see her from being a very young lad. And he would tell her all his troubles, and somehow together they used to work things out. Well, he went in and he told her all about it. It all came tumbling out. She didn't say too much. In fact, she didn't say too much at all, and she didn't really pass comment. And after that, he just went back to going on his ferry, and things were much the same routine as normal. And so life went on. But then quite a long time after that, he was out, and this time it was just the crates and the barrels, no livestock, no people. And it was a different kind of day. None of this blue skies and fluffy clouds. No, it was grey, it was green, it was misty. You couldn't quite see all round about you. And the water to begin with was very still. But then it started that the wind came up and the rain came down. And before he knew it, his boat was rocking, and all he could do was hold on to the rudder with all his might and try and be sure that his boat was okay. I mean, if he didn't get to Inverness with all the goods, he wouldn't get paid. And if he didn't get paid, he wouldn't eat. Well, he held on and he held on, and it was such, the rain was coming dashing up, and he could actually see some water coming onto the deck, and he was beginning to get really worried. And then he heard this great big thud at the stern of the boat, and he looked over and he thought it was going to be a rock, and all he could see was a grey blur. But then shortly after that came another at the stern, and he realized, he saw the eyes, he saw the neck, but he realized that this creature wasn't actually trying to harm him, because his boat was being propelled forward into the calmer water, and all these people were on the shore. And they were a bit far away, but they could still make out what was going on, or they thought they could. And they were sure that Mackenzie was in great danger and that there was something dreadful going to happen because of this creature. But then the creature went back into the water. And Mackenzie was very grateful. And as he got to the shore, they're all there shouting, that monster that was after you. And they were all shouting about getting sticks and stones and swords. And Mackenzie was trying to explain that this was a creature, and that it wasn't trying to harm them, and it wasn't chasing him, and he wasn't in danger from it. But the more he tried to explain, it seemed the less they believed. And so he decided, before he got into a bit of a snarl up himself, that he would just quietly unload his cargo of barrels and his cargo of crates, give them to the people, collect his money, and go home. But oh, he was troubled. He was troubled thinking, what could have happened to that creature, or what might happen to that creature in the future? Maybe he didn't understand all about it, but this was a creature. This was on God's earth, the same as him, and it had rights. It wasn't trying to harm him. At least he felt sure about that. But he knew that all the villagers round about had a different view on things. So what did he do when he was in trouble? He went to his granny, and he started to tell her all about this new adventure of his. And well, she just sat there quietly, but at the end she could tell how agitated Mackenzie was, and how he was looking for some sort of solution, that he was worried for the creature. And well, the people had got the wrong end of the stick. They'd even got the wrong stick, never mind the wrong end of the stick. So anyway, his granny went on about St. Columba of Iona. Now, Iona wasn't far away, and St. Columba was very well respected, and he'd come to stay nearby. Very wise, very learned, very kind. The people had a lot of respect for him. And Mackenzie realized he wasn't going to solve this problem by himself, so he went to see St. Columba, and he told him all about it. And to begin with, they decided just to sleep on it. But the next day, Mackenzie was up early, and he went down, and St. Columba was ready. They went down by the river, and there was a beautiful hazel tree by the edge of the water. And what St. Columba did was break it off, and he made a staff. And in his left hand, he held it. And he went down by the water's edge, and he said, "O monster of the loch, I bid you appear before me." And he said it again, "O monster of the loch, I bid you appear before me." But still nothing happened. Well, Mackenzie wasn't too happy about this creature being called a monster, but he still listened as St. Columba did it again. "O monster of the loch, I bid you appear before me." And this time the water did stir, and out popped the head and the eyes and hooded lids and the long neck and the body and the tail. And by now there'd been quite a lot of villagers were not too far away, but St. Columba had heard them coming, and he'd held out his other hand to hush them. And then he said, looking straight at the creature, not a monster as far as Mackenzie was concerned, he said, "I bid you peace above in the air. I bid you peace below in the earth, and I bid you peace in the waters of the deep." And it seemed to Mackenzie that this creature, this wonderful creature that everybody seemed to be misunderstanding, looked at him as much as to acknowledge what had happened. And then it went off into the deep once more. And the crowd slowly dispersed. And after they had dispersed, St. Columba said to Mackenzie, "You know, normally it's the case that I would be saving the people from the monster or the creature. But in this case, it's the creature that has been saved from the people." And Mackenzie, well, he went back to his home, and days after that, he was filled with a sense of wonder. And he tried to communicate that in the paintings that he made. And there were all the greys and the blues and the greens and the mist. And there were some with bright blue skies. And always somewhere in these landscapes was a swirling of the water. For who knows what lives down below.
Oh, God. Just lovely, Diana. Thank you so much. That was brilliant. Loved
Thank
it. Absolutely. Yeah. Right. So I hope I've got it right this time, Keith, and it's to you. I love the picture behind you. Is that a picture of the fans or a picture of Middle Earth?
It's Middle Earth, I think, but
Yeah.
deep in the forest, there's a cottage. Yes, I'm going to carry on the story about the dog and the cat. Because, well, first of all, the cat, it got fed up with climbing trees, and well, she went off and she had a brief affair with a tom cat, but it didn't last very long, and so she went to live in this cottage deep in the forest, and it's a two-story cottage, and she lived upstairs. And she just liked that rather than being in a tree. She liked to be upstairs, and she had some friends that had drones. They used to fly in milk and some meat for her to eat, and also there's another set of drones that would take away all the cat litter. So she never went downstairs. She lived upstairs in this cottage. Now the dog, he had to have a time of convalescence. He was taken to the vets, and he was in veterinary surgery and in the hospital for quite a long time until his back was healed. And he came and he lived in the downstairs of this cottage deep in the forest. And so the cat lived upstairs, never to go downstairs. And the dog lived downstairs and never to go upstairs. And he was okay on the ground floor. He was supplied with his with the water and the food that he wanted. But late one night, he was fast asleep, and there's this awful noise. Meow, 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 meow. And it woke the dog up, and he thought, it's that cat. And so the dog crept up the stairs, step by step. When he came to the first bedroom and nosed the door open, nothing there. Came to the second bedroom, nosed it open, nothing there. Went to the end of the corridor, at the top of the stairs, nosed the door open, And there at the other end of the room was the cat. And it was laid out with about 6 or 7 kittens suckling. And the dog looked at the kittens and said, "Dinner," and started to walk towards the cat and the kittens. Now the cat, she stood up and shook herself, and she started to paw towards the dog until they're eye to eye, nose to nose, and suddenly the cat said, "Woof!" And the hairs on the back of the dog stood on end. He ran down the stairs, never to go up the stairs again. And the cat turned to the little kittens and said, "Now, children, this is a very important lesson to learn. It's very important to learn a second language."
Right, thank you, Keith. Now we're going to go to Phil next, but I'm going to sort of just give it 5 minutes because we've been here an hour already. So we're going to be here for another hour at least. So if you want to refill your glasses, go to the toilets or anything else, we'll get started about 8 o'clock. And then we'll just be here for as long as it takes. Okay. I'll leave this all open. So will Ali. So if you want to unmute yourselves and have a chat amongst yourselves for 5 minutes while we're doing this, or just take the opportunity to do what you need to do.
I'm going to do a very British thing. I'm going to have me a spot of tea.
Spot of tea.
Yes.
You put your milk in first. Oh.
Milk in tea.
Oh.
It's bad enough I put milk in coffee.
You don't put milk in your tea.
It depends on the tea. And it also depends on how it's been prepared. It's just like tea to me is like coffee in this aspect. When coffee is prepared just right, I put nothing in it. I drink it like my heritage, black. When tea is just right, I put nothing in it. And I have 2 roommates from way back when my beard was black and I had hair under here, who used to drink tea all the time. And I learned to drink tea without putting in any accoutrements. So sometimes when the tea is not of great quality or people haven't prepared it exactly right, I'll add a little something to it. But I tell you one thing, never add milk if you've already put in lemon.
No,
No.
of course.
No, it'll tee you off. But bump.
You're being very American, Babasi.
Of
Yeah.
course. No. I have to be in Marrakesh to be American. Right now, I'm African American.
Yes. No. You would be any kind of American, and just get all funny about tea. You know, no, just make it a pot, put it in a pot, and then just don't go any poncy kind of this tea or that tea or something. Tea is tea. If it comes out dark and you put a bit of milk in it and you don't kill it off and make it too, so it's still a nice tan color, and you just Duncan would do builder's tea, and he'd boil the whole lot up in a kettle, and so there'd be the tea, the milk, and the sugar, and everything boiled up together. And if you made him a cup, if you took the tea bag out before and gave him the cup without the tea bag in, he'd probably throw the cup at you.
Tea bags. I also
he liked tea you could stand a spoon up, didn't he, Mike?
He did, absolutely. Or he'd put whiskey in the coffee.
Yeah, builder's tea.
I do that.
Yeah.
I learned to drink tea bulk, and then when I switched back to tea bag, there's a difference between bulk tea and tea bag tea. But I learned to drink tea bulk, and that's my preferred way of drinking tea. However, I'm a versatile person. I can try different things and compare the different flavors and complexities.
Right.
I have to say though, Bubba, I don't think I've ever had a really good cup of tea in the United States. I've had great coffee, but most people, I don't know, and especially when you're in a restaurant and they'll bring you a pot of water that hasn't quite boiled in a tea bag, and you're supposed to make tea out of it. That's all I'm like,
No, I
"Oh,
agree.
my
I
God."
agree with you. I agree with you. There was one restaurant that used to serve tea correctly. Even when they used to bring you a pot of tea, but there would be tea, loose tea inside, but it would be in a not a filter, but it would be in the little like
Infuser.
yes, thank
That's
you,
right.
thank
Yeah,
you.
yeah.
And it was great teas, and they had great food. Sadly, the restaurant is no longer around, but it was great, and it left me with great memories.
Well,
And I'll tell you something. Most Americans don't appreciate a great cup of coffee because they've been brewing it and seeping it wrong for centuries.
yeah. But like my mother used to have a samovar because we're Ukrainian, and it made beautiful tea. And so Russian tea is different from British tea, but even so, I have a lot of British influence in my life, and it is really hard in the United States to get a decent cup of tea if you ever
I
get
agree.
one.
Well,
I agree.
there is one way of doing it, Valentina. So what you do is you go into a restaurant with your own tea bag and say, "Bring me some boiling water." Right? And just don't let them, if they're from the States, don't let them anywhere near anything else. Just say, "I want to get the cup with a boiling
But
water."
they'll charge you
make
for
it
the boiling
yourself.
water.
That's
Yeah.
all- that's
Or
what
they
you
bring
do.
you Earl Grey tea and want you to put milk in it. And I can't
Oh,
stand,
no,
I
no,
cannot
Earl
stand
Grey,
tea in
no,
there.
no,
Yeah, I can't stand milk and Earl Grey tea. Like,
no, no.
where were
But
you?
anyway, so right, it's been nice to talk to you. Let's get back to it. So Phil from the Highlands, and we're going to then
Hello.
Valentina, then Janet.
Wow,
Okay?
that was quick.
I've just got to love the fact that I asked a question and Baba's answer was actually no, and it took 5 minutes to get to the end of it. Do you take milk in your tea? No. Yeah, I've just got to love it.
Absolutely. Why do you think I did what I did, Phil? We could be here all afternoon. Right, Janet, you have to mute yourself, my friend. Right, Phil. So what's the weather like up in? It's been really hot here today. So
Oh no, we've actually been very cool today. I don't know you, Diana, but we've had fog at Stony all day today. So we've had a sea har all day. So it's been very cool here today.
okay.
It's been quite pleasant. Right, well, I'm going to take you for a wee story. I'm not sure if it was in your day or if it was in my day, but it was in somebody's day. And there was this gypsy traveling down the road with his family in his caravan, and he was just getting ready to settle for the night. Finds a nice stream and a nice clearing beside it where the family would just settle down and camp up for the night. Not a care in the world, heading on down the road. But meanwhile, on the same road, there were 4 demons. There was bad luck, sickness, death, and misery. And they were awa heading into town. It was a Saturday night, and they were going to be having great fun in the town. But they come across this gypsy travelling family, and they thought, wouldn't I hate to get to town tonight? We've got trouble here. We can have great fun because we are demons, and we can have fun here. So they had a wee conversation with themselves, and bad luck decided that he would go off down the road, and he would divert the caravan to the stream that was poisoned. And sickness says, oh, that's great, but I'll be there waiting for them, and I'll hate cholera in that stream. And the family will get cholera and they'll get sick. And death goes, that's perfect. I'll be there with them as there as well, and I'll collect in the souls. And misery goes, and of course the gypsy traveller will live, and I'll sit on his shoulder for the rest of his days and remind him of the misery if it happened that night and if he lost. So the traveller's going down the road, not a care in the world, and bad luck appears. Now, these 4 demons had been getting away with causing havoc all over the place, and they were getting a little bit just too cocky with themselves. So he decided, "Ugh, it's a wee bit until we get to that stream where I'm going to divert them. I'll just hop on to the back of the caravan and I'll ride down the road on the caravan with them." And just as he did that, he kicked a stone, which disturbed the horse, which reared up and a shoe fell off it, went fleeing through the air and smacked him right on the back of the head. And doing it, he went like a red brick. Now, once the gypsy had controlled his horse and he went back to see Bad Luck lying there, passed out, big lump beginning to appear in his head. And being a good gypsy, he thought, oh, there's a bit of metal there. And he picked up the horseshoe and he hung it on to the side of the caravan by the door, and they settled off down the road. Now, meanwhile, sickness, death, and misery were waiting at the poison stream. And sickness pulled out a pack of John Player specials and they started smoking away. Death pulled out a packet of cards and they started playing cards. And misery started dealing, moaning every time because he was such a misery, what a bad hand he got. And once they'd smoked all the fags and drank all the beer and run out of games to play, and misery had actually stopped complaining for once, they wondered far on earth Bad Luck was. So out pops their mobile phones and they check to see where Bad Luck is, and no response and no answer. So they toddle off up the road, and here they find Bad Luck, lying on the road with a bump on his head the size of a goose's egg just coming to. And he tells them what's happened about the horse's shoe hitting him in the head and passing out. Well, they wrapped Bad Luck up with some brown paper and vinegar and left him at the side of the road. And the misery and sickness and death headed off down the road, and they found the gypsy travellers sitting at an unpolluted stream. And while they had been out finding Bad Luck and all that, of course the family had tickled some trout and from the stream, and they'd had a good feed and were settled down for the night. So sickness, death, and misery starts creeping towards the caravan. Down they go with their arms outstretched and their long nails appearing out of their hands as they start fearing. And just all of a sudden, all three of them stopped still because they all saw the horse's shoe on the side of the door. And they saw the horse. And all three of them thought at the same time, that horse has still got 3 shoes left. And we can't fit damage one shoe did to Bad Luck. So they just started slowly creeping all the way back out of the camp. And they headed off. Now that gypsy family lived a great long life, and death did collect them many, many years later, peacefully in their sleep. But now you know why we keep horseshoes on our doors, to ward off bad luck, sickness, death, and misery.
Ah, thank you very much, Phil. That's brilliant. Yeah, great. Right, Valentina, all the way from Ontario.
Space mute, currently unmuted. Alt+A, but
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay, great. For once, my internet's not bothering me today. So I'm going to tell a story too that's on the lighter side. People who know me here know that I tell stories, what I like to refer to as urban myths. Often they're stories that happen to me because when you have a disability, you really do have to develop a sense of humor. And so many strange things can happen just at a second's with no notice. You know, you're walking along minding your business, and all of a sudden you're in the middle of something that perhaps you've caused or inadvertently started, and it's chain of events, and you're kind of shaking your head and going like, what is this all about? And it's one of these kind of stories that I want to share with you guys today. So I want to tell you how you can get rid of an annoying gang of motorcycle people out of a quiet neighborhood with a baby buggy. So it's a brilliant spring day in Ontario. The winters are long and they're cold and gray and snowy and whatever. But when spring comes, you get this burst of air and it's like being reborn again. And I don't think you can experience something like that unless you do live in a cold climate. And then all of a sudden, spring is here and it can just set your heart aglow, really. It's just such an exhilarating feeling. And it was an afternoon like that. And I had two little girls. One was about 2.5, and her sister was maybe 4 or 5 months old. And it was such a beautiful day. I thought, the older one can use a walk because she's restless, and the younger one will fall asleep in the carriage. She'll have a nap, and I can go to the store and get my milk and come home, and we'll all be fresh aired and we'll feel better and whatever. So I dressed them up. I put the baby in the buggy, tucked her in, put an extra blanket on her so she didn't get cold, dressed her sister, and in those days, I could just see past my pram. So I could see the sidewalk just past my pram, and my neighbors all knew that it was a blind person wandering around with a baby and carriage, and they knew just to get out of my way. So it was fine. I felt perfectly comfortable. The store was at a plaza in our suburb, which was about 3.5 blocks away from our house. So I'm just moseying down on the street, enjoying the weather and walking towards the plaza to get my milk and thinking about what else I could pick up since I'm at the convenience store. And in the meantime, you need to know that I was married to a police officer who also worked in the station in the area. And around, the Christmas of the time just before I'm talking about, there was a gang of motorcycle people who liked to gather at our local donut shop, which was also at the plaza where my milk store was. So, and it's not that they did anything, but it was a family place, really quiet, but they'd like to gather there, and there'd be like 20 of them roaring their Harleys around, and they might come and stay till late at night, and then they're roaring around. And of course, people who don't bother to get to know people who drive motorcycles have opinions. And so my ex would often get asked, like, can the police do something to get these motorcycles out of our neighborhood? And he's going, well, they're not really doing anything. Well, they're noisy, they're this, they're that, the other thing. But he'd say, well, they wouldn't be my favorite people to ask to stay here, but they're not doing anything. They can come and they can sit and have a coffee just like anyone else. Now, unbeknownst to me, that afternoon, they felt the spring in the air too. And they decided to get their group together at our local coffee shop. So I'm walking on the sidewalk. I have to cross a parking lot and turn left. And between me and my convenience store, there is the corner coffee shop. So I have to go get to the sidewalk, turn onto the sidewalk, go around the corner to the convenience store. And what I did not know is that they had parked their motorcycles 1, 2, 3, up to about 15 in a line. And these were big motorcycles. They were, you could tell by the way they roared in and out that, most of them were Harleys or whatever. So I'm walking across the parking lot, get to the sidewalk, I turn left, and the hood of my baby carriage clips the first Harley. And I hear bang, 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 bang. And it made such a huge noise. I was startled, and I'm standing there like a deer with the headlights in my eyes and going like, what happened? The next thing I know, I'm surrounded with all these big guys, like what the hell? Can't you see where you're going? Like, what the bleep bleep are you doing? Don't you know you damaged our motorcycles? Like, can't you pay attention where you're going? And I'm going, well, no, I can't. I'm blind. Well, what the F is a blind person doing walking around with a baby carriage? You got 2 little kids, blah, blah, blah. You know, we're going to call the police. And I said, yes, that's a good idea. My husband's at work. Maybe he'll take the call. And one of the guys looks at me and goes like, what the hell? They all get on their motorcycles. They drive away and we never saw them again. And that is how you clear out a motorcycle gang with your baby buggy.
Okay, please
Wonderful.
forgive me for this, but I guess you could say they were blindsided.
Yeah. And so, you know, like there's a lot of funny stories like that. So I like to share them. And you have to have your sense of humor. But
You
anyway,
are a
Classic
jewel.
too. The way you just
Oh.
put the first one and they all went down. I think that's magic. You can
you couldn't have done it if you set it up that way. It was just
no,
so
that's
funny.
true. Yeah.
So
Well,
thank
absolutely
you.
wonderful. Thanks there, Valentine. That was really
Thanks.
good. So I've got 2 left. I've got John and I've got Janet. Now I know Janet wants to do a story. So John, are you up for one, or are you doing poetry, or are you just
No, I'll do a short story.
right? So I tell you what, should we do Janet and then you do a short story to finish?
Yep. Sounds
Okay.
good to me.
right.
Just a minute. Hang on a minute. I've just got somebody in the kitchen. Let me just have a quick word with him, and I'll be back.
Okay. Well, I'll put John on, and then you can take as much time as you like. So John, you're on, mate.
This is, I think this is for anyone who's ever had a mean husband. And it's an Afghan story. And there was, and I don't think I've ever told this one here before because it's kind of, I'm just working on it. And Jamal, well, he was a rich man. He had shops all over Kabul. He had caravans coming in and full of goods. He could have afforded anything he wanted, but he made his family live in a shack. And he never gave any money to his wife to have new clothes. She was dressed in rags. And well, they were lucky if they got half a carrot and half a naan bread to eat each day. But he was a devout man. And so every Friday he'd pop down to the mosque and he'd do his prayers. And on the way back, he'd call at the graveyard dedicated to the martyrs. So this particular Friday, he'd come down and he'd been to the mosque and he's down the graveyard and he sees the most beautiful snake. I mean, it is gorgeous. And it's got a crown on its head. And he's looking at it. And then he becomes conscious that behind the snake is a huge cobra about to attack the snake. And if he's unlucky, attack him as well. So he picked up a stone and he threw it, knocked off the cobra's head. Went back and thought nothing more about it. Just took, bought half a moldy carrot, bed and naan bread. His wife looked really disappointed when she came in. It's Friday, so after prayers, you'd think it maybe just get a little bit of meat or something, but no. Said, why? What are you complaining about? Don't you know how much goodness there's in a carrot? But fortunately, a neighbour had killed a sheep and shared it out amongst the neighbours, so they had a good meal that night. And he went to bed. In the middle of the night, there's a knock on the door. He thinks, who's knocking up? Someone will want something. He's not happy, and he comes down and he looks out. There's a little crack in the door, a little thing just see. There's 2 strangers out there, and they said, our master wants to see you. He wants to reward you for your good deed. Well, he couldn't think of any good deed he'd done, but the word reward just resounded in his head. So he opened the door, and They said, come with us. All he's thinking about is, well, what reward am I going to get? And they walk and they walk, and then suddenly he realizes he's in some kind of underworld, or not underworld, but a sort of in-between world. It wasn't, it was maybe like that behind Keith there, except it smelled horrible. And then suddenly they grabbed him and tied his arms behind his back and blindfolded him. They said, don't be afraid. Our master wants to reward you. He wants to give you gifts. And he's thinking, jewels, diamonds. And the stranger said, no, whatever he offers you, turn it down. Just say, I want the gift of myself. Made no sense, but he went along with it, and eventually the smell started, it was just, less acrid and more flowery, and then eventually they take off his blindfold and untie his hands, and there at the end of a sort of path of flowers, beautiful path of flowers, is someone looking very much like Keith, in fact, with a long white beard, long white hair. Looks nothing like me at all. And he said, I wanted to thank you. We are genies. And our daughter is a little bit wayward, but the king of the underworld wants to marry her. And she doesn't want him. And we don't really want her married to the king of the underworld. But he keeps chasing her, and we couldn't get rid of him. But she's a bit wayward, and occasionally she likes to go into the world of people. So she shapeshifts into being, this morning she shapeshifted into being a snake. So she's slithering along with a crown on her head. And the king of the underworld noticed and turned himself into a cobra. Well, if I can't have her, no one can have her. And he was about to strike when you picked up that stone, striking his head. I need to reward you. And he flicked his fingers, and in came a tray full of such jewels and diamonds you have never seen in all of your life. Well, most of us anyway. And he's about to grab it, and he catches the eye of the two people that brought him there, and he remembers what they said. So he says, no, I don't want that. And the jinn thinks he wants more and brings in 2 trays this time, but with enormous self-control, he says, I just want the gift of myself. So the jinn smiled, and he called for a little packet, and he popped a little key into the middle of the packet and put the packet on a piece of string, hung it around his neck, so the key was down inside his shirt. He was blindfolded, and his hands turned up, and he was led back, and they took off the blindfold and the restraints on his hands, and there he was outside his house, his little shack. And he looked at it, he was disgusted with himself. I can't make my family live like this. I mean, before he had such a reputation, he was known around the whole of Kabul as Jamal the Miser. And then he went in and he saw the rags his wife was dressing in. Why am I treating my wife like this? And he looked in the cupboard for the food, and the carrot was even more moldy, and that half an iron had gone dry. And he put his hand in his pocket, and he gave a great pile of coins to his youngest son and said, go to the market, buy sweetmeats, buy any food you want. And he sent out for tailors to bring rolls of cloth so his wife could choose exactly what fabric she wanted, and then got all clothes designers to design her clothes and built themselves a beautiful house. And whenever anyone wanted anything for charity, he gave it, and he became known as Jamal the Beneficent. And then he suddenly remembered that little package, and he opened it. He took out the key, and he realized the gift he had been given was the key to his heart.
Yeah, thank you, John. It's Afghanistan. You think that can
Yeah,
start from
okay.
there? Yeah. Oh, right. Okay. Right. So, last but very much not least, we go to Staffordshire, and I think we're getting a mermaid story from the Midlands, but I'm not quite sure. But we'll go over to Janet, and then we'll have a quick chat about John, if you can hang on for a second. So, Jan, over to you. You're looking very summery, if I may say so.
Well, it's very hot, isn't it? In fact, when John was in Cropredy, I was about 2 villages away. And the reason I couldn't speak was I was with my grandson, and we were going to go and walk from there to Cropredy. And on Saturday, it was so hot that we thought, no, we are not walking. We were going to walk across the fields. There's a path called the Jurassic Way, and we were going to do that. It's about 4 miles. No, not us, not the dogs. That was it. So we stayed in. And
I'd spend the whole weekend at a little festival down where we are playing. We've been playing music under gazebos. Look at the state of me.
yeah,
Yeah,
well,
look, no wonder they call me Rusty, you know.
well, I just couldn't have done it. This old lady couldn't have managed it. Anyway, I'm sort of in the Oxfordshire, Northamptonshire border right now, but I come from a county called Staffordshire, and it is in more or less the centre of England. It has no coastline, none at all. So it's a little bit unusual for it to have a mermaid story. And Staffordshire is a county which in the north we've got moorlands and fairly rugged features, including Kinder Scout. Now there is a mermaid story for Kinder Scout, which is oddly enough inland. Mermaid story? Yes, it is, but I'm not going to tell that one. You've just got to move slightly south to Leek, which is on the edge of the moorlands. And from a village called Thorncliffe, there came a man who went to sea. He was a sailor. He was a sailor for a long, long time. But his crewmates thought him rather strange, because he wasn't a sailor that had a wife in every port. He wasn't a sailor that frequented the hostelries when they were in port. He wasn't a sailor that burst into vulgar song. He wasn't a sailor who boasted of his conquests. Oh no, he was a quiet man. He could often be seen on the deck, gazing out to sea as if in meditation. And his crewmate said, he's got a secret. He has to have a secret. But he never told them his secret. Well, how could he? How could he, the sailor, tell those rough and ready crewmates that he had fallen in love? He couldn't tell them that. He'd be laughed at. He'd be laughed at even more if he told them that he was gazing out to sea because his love was a mermaid. They would scoff at him. More than he simply could not tell them that the mermaid loved him. For year after year, she followed the galleon and spent time together. Soon, after a while, not so very soon, he decided that it was time to return to his village in the county of Staffordshire. He lived in a village called Thorncliffe, which is towards the north of Staffordshire. So it was quite a journey to come from the coast to carry his mermaid across land. So they would stop in the rivers and they would rest. They would stop in the lakes and they would rest. Eventually they reached Thorncliffe. He had never divulged his secret to his crewmates. He took his mermaid to an isolated lake called Blackmere. Blackmere is a lake, you can reach it easily on foot, but few people go there. It's always been known to be an isolated lake. Some have said it's bottomless. This was the perfect place for the mermaid. So the sailor and the mermaid continued their love at Blackmere Lake. The sailor never told anybody. He kept it a secret. Oh, yes, there were rumors. The villagers said, he's a man with a secret. We'll find out what it is. He'll tell us one day. He'll tell us when he gets drunk in the pub, but he never did. He was always quiet and sober. They knew that he would go to the lake. They didn't know why. They didn't ask. They simply shrugged his shoulders and said, well, he's an inlander who's been a sailor. He's bound to have seen things that we have never seen. We'll keep him safe. We'll let him keep his secret. Year upon year, the sailor and the mermaid enjoyed each other's company by Blackmere Lake. But the inevitable happened. The inevitable being that the sailor died. And the mermaid? Well, mermaids are immortal. She didn't die. But nobody knew she was there. He'd never told anybody his secret. So nobody came. The mermaid who'd had a heart full of love, a face that smiled when she saw her sailor, became hard-faced, cold-hearted, bitter, lonely, abandoned. Year, decade, century went by. Very few people went to Blackmere Lake. It was an isolated lake. But some men decided, I've heard it's bottomless. Let's find out. Let's find out. And if there's plenty of water there, we can dig a trench. We can take it across the moors and we can take it to irrigate our lands. And so they took their spades and they began to dig a trench. And in fact, if you go to Blackmere Lake today, you can see the very beginnings of this trench, but only the beginnings, for it was never, ever finished, never finished. For as they began to dig, and as they dug this trench, they heard a phenomenal wailing. I can't even begin to wail. I know Babasi would wail. He would wail a mermaid's wail that would be heard from Washington across the Atlantic and into Staffordshire. It was such a wail. And the mermaid, hard-faced, cold-hearted, abandoned, alone, began to scream out her curses. And the curse that she made was that should another sod be dug by the side of her lake, Blackmere Lake, she would allow the waters to rush out and the whole of the moorlands, but particularly the town of Leek in Staffordshire, would be drowned, flooded. Every man, woman, child, cattle, bird, beast, everyone would perish in the flood from her bottomless lake. She sank back into the waters, and the men threw their shovels in, threw in their spades, rolled up their trousers, and they ran. They ran as far away as they could get. Yes, Baba, they ran. Nobody runs around Blackmere Lake anymore. Nobody takes their cattle there, for it is said that if cattle enter the lake, they come out with great scratches down their bodies. It is said that if a bird attempts to fly over Blackmere Lake, the air is so polluted, you simply fall inside. And if a man or woman or child tries to bathe in Blackmere Lake, well, they don't, if they ever want to be seen again. Thank you.
Oh, lovely, Janet. Thank you. Those stories like that are just up my street. I know a couple of very similar ones about the mayors over in the north of Shropshire and stuff. That's
the
a
same
wonderful
story.
story. Yeah,
There is a second story about Blackmere Lake, which is a bit more prosaic, which, again, it's supposed to be haunted by a spirit. A young man called Joseph, I forget his surname right this minute, was spurned by a young woman, and he took his revenge by claiming she was a witch. And of course, you know what happens to witches. They're dunked into the water. She was drowned. And it is said that it is not the ghost of the mermaid, but it is the ghost of the innocent witch who haunts the lake. But either way, I'm not going anywhere near Blackmere Lake.
Well, that's cool. Right. Well, I've had a wonderful evening. I've just sat here again and listened to some lovely stories. And I'm preparing to go up to Whitby. Yeah. And John, if you could stay on for a second, if Ali's still there, because I need to talk to you about something. And so I'm going to hand back to the World Storytelling Cafe and John Rowe, who's for once not in a field or not in a van or not in a shed or not in a yurt or not in a tent. He's actually in a house.
Yeah,
and he's here with us.
It's only going to happen for a few days. The next time, so what we've got coming up on the cafe is on Tuesday, of course, at 5 o'clock. We've got our young storytellers, but next weekend we have an experiment. And Ali, I need to send you all the stuff on this, but and Baba C, I need to talk to you at some point, but I'll give you our Facebook message. But we're going to be broadcasting live, sort of through the cafe, but into Folk East. So we'll just have international tellers in, and we're going into. We're going to have screens in a tent, and we're doing a children's stories on Friday. We're trying to get young tellers on the Saturday, and a very short story round on the Sunday. So that'll be quite interesting. And I haven't, because I've been in fields, I'm really behind organising this, but you're all such wonderful people. Everyone will get me out of trouble. I love you all.
John, could I interject just one thing? I'll make it brief. I want to thank everyone today. Special thanks. I'm usually a very up and very up person. Today, the doldrums had me by the horns, even though I don't have horns. But I want to thank each and every one of you because you have pulled me out of my doldrums, and I'm feeling much better. In fact, I'm ready to tackle the rest of the day. Asante Sana, thank you very much. Storytelling has power. Thank you.
It's always a pleasure to be yeah, it's always a pleasure to be in your company, Baba. Thank you very much. Okay, so I'm going to call it, John. I need to talk to you, so don't go away. Keith,
Yeah,
I'll see you in Whitby.
Yeah, and
Okay.
if Ali can just take off the live, just so it's just a conversation.
Currently muted. Alt plus A button.
If you can just stop it.
Okay. I'll see you all for the storytelling next time. Okay, fellas. Bye-bye, bye-bye, bye-bye.
Bye, guys.
To be continued.
Bye-bye.
Alt F4. End meeting or leave meeting.
Right. So, Waleed, so if we can have it stopping recording on Facebook and stuff, that'd be great.
Do you need me to stick around or should I go also?
No, that's,
I need to talk to John for a moment. If you don't mind, Baba, can I just talk to John for a few moments? And I'm sure he'll catch up with you next time on Facebook.
Okay, it's cool. Thank you, guys.
Okay. See you,
I'm out.
Baba. Still, thank you. Okay.
Waleed or Ali,
Right.
could you just knock off the Facebook Live?
Okay.
Yeah.
Lovely.
Okay.
Thank you. Right. I'll wait till I see that go off.
Right.
It hasn't gone yet.
I know it hasn't gone yet. No.
No. Or if Ali's around, if he can stop the Facebook Live. But Willeen, you should be able to in the cafe, shouldn't you? Or if Ali's anywhere around, he can do
I
it.
left it with you, Valley. Can you stop the recording on Facebook? Do you know how to do it, mate?
It should be on the bottom of the screen where it goes. I think more is probably where it comes up. No. Settings.
So, John, are you at home? Because we'll close this down. I'll give you a call.
Yeah, let's close it down and we'll and ring me. Yeah, I'm at home.
I'll phone you on the phone.
We can have a FP conversation or something. Okay, right. Thank you very much, everyone, for the cafe. We will leave and leave you two, and I'll just complicate your life next weekend, Willeen. Okay. Gonna see you, everyone, and give me a ring, Mike, as soon as we're gone. As soon as I can find my phone. Bye.